Hey Tim, how you been?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
Been pretty good. Been just busy, busy.
Yes, yes.
You think that once the kids are out of school for the summer break that you would have like some kind of relaxing time, but no, not me. It's been actually more busier.
Absolutely. Yeah, they got me out of the routine. And so now things are just chaotic.
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing too. Yeah, I didn't think of that part. Yeah, that is true. My son actually asked him yesterday. I was like, "Hey, you're gonna be in high school next year." I was like, "You ready to start school again?" He's like, "Yeah, actually, yeah, I am." I'm like, "Really? You want to go back to school?" He's like, "Yeah, I do want to go back to school." I was like, okay, that's interesting.
That's
I was like,
great.
yeah, I was like, why? Because I guess because he misses the routine and talking to people and stuff like that. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's understandable.
Might also be excited to start high school too.
Oh yeah, that is true. Yeah, yeah, something new.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's great.
All right. So what would you like to share about your diagnosis?
Yeah, sure. So, I have ADHD, I have autism, I have dyslexia, and I have both PTSD and CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah. See,
And
I haven't heard of that one. The last one you're talking about, the CP. I always get them all confused. CPSD, right? Yeah.
CPTSD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's new for me. So I'm definitely interested in hearing more about that one.
Yeah. CPTSD is relatively new. It's not in the DSM-5 yet, so which is used to diagnose, complex mental health and such. And so there's still a lot that's being learned about it. When I found out that I had PTS or CPTSD, I just considered it PTSD because I didn't know that there was anything else that was different. But I knew it definitely had to be trauma. Um, and it wasn't until later on that I realized the significant difference between both PTSD and CPTSD and sort of the physiological changes that they kind of have on your brain and everything.
Mhm. That is true. And did you want to explain like what it is, like what it stands for? Because I know some people don't know what that is.
Yeah. Yeah. So PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Um, they're essentially, well, PTSD would be when, uh, for instance, you're experiencing a traumatic event. So we'll see like soldiers will usually have things like this. They'll come back from, battle with these types of moments, or somebody who experiences something tragic. They will have, you know, the mind will try to reconcile what's happening. Um, and that's one type of way that people will get stuck within PTSD is sort of in that moment of trying to understand what took place in the mind, trying to understand what took place. For complex post-traumatic stress disorder, this one is more multiple events over an extended period of time. And so, in my instance, it was from youth, from ages like 3 to 7. And it was sort of a repeated traumatic event that would take place. And so, because of that, there's other types of things that can occur, such as developmental differences, and, growing up in a particular type of environment as well. Um, there's learning to sort of how you take in the world when you're so young, you're in a fear state. The way that you take in the world is completely different, and so there's a lot of things that then build on top of that. So there's that, but then also in my particular case of CPTSD, it also includes a dissociative aspect where during the time when I was a child and was experiencing these events, I would black out.
Mhm.
And my mind would actually protect me from what was happening by dulling everything around me. And it wasn't until last year that all those memories came back. And so that's when I discovered that I had this, was when one night just tons of memories came back from my childhood. So discovering that part also kind of revealed how it's complex because I did not know that the brain was powerful enough to what was essentially DVRing my childhood and then playing it back for me decades later. Um, and also at the same time, one last part of it is that it also, um, when I was dissociated, all the sensations, feelings, everything that was happening, basically that my brain would process, it stopped processing and it held on to. And then when everything was revealed, that's when all those feelings and everything were processed. And so then it kind of held on to like the body signals of like pain and all that kind of stuff for decades and then just released them. So it's a very fascinating type of way that the brain sort of approaches processing trauma, especially processing it later on in life.
Hmm. Oh, that's interesting. It's definitely complex. I
Yeah.
mean, how our mind, works on us, I mean, either it works for us or works against us. And it's like
Yeah.
sometimes it takes years for it to come back, and give us our memories, that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when I found out about the trauma, I was very confused because when I looked at everything, when these memories were coming back, I wasn't seeing them as a child anymore. I was seeing them as, someone in their 40s and, somebody who had matured, had grown up and, had a better perspective of the world. And it was very disorienting to see these memories, but see him as an adult and see him so fresh, but as an adult, because that's when you realize that things were so much more complicated than you recalled, you know, um, to say the least, and that there's just so much more that you look at where you don't have that innocence of a child that's kind of blocking you out from everything. You have this full view where you're seeing, this world that you were a part of, but from this present view, which again was very disorienting, but at the same time very revealing because it showed me really how um, not only how trauma impacted me, but how trauma plus my neurodivergence
Mhm.
and the combination of all these things, how they kind of stacked upon each other to give me the kind of life experience that I had,
Yeah.
which I'm finding ways to then um, dissect and take apart and grow from.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's all we can do, right? Just try to figure out like what happened in those situations and how we perceived them at that time, and then now how we are, growing up, it's like, okay, well, how do we take this now? Like, I know I can understand it, how confusing it can be.
Yeah, I mean, part of it was, when I realized I had the CPTSD and PTSD was also when I hit burnout, and so I didn't discover that I was neurodivergent until last year, because I was very high masking, and even in just like the last 6 months to truly understand what it means to be masking and everything revealed for me a lot of, oh, I was doing this all the time. And realizing that that's why I hit burnout because it was just nonstop, constantly masking on top of masking. But I was very, it was a very confusing time for me because not only did I hit burnout and then all of my masking abilities were just gone, but then I also discovered I had this trauma. And for me, it was just a bunch of everything.
Mhm.
Everything just happened because it was the same day that I kind of hit the burnout and realized these symptoms are just like these traits, these things. They're like I can't control them anymore. Like I don't know what's happening, and so then I finally got down enough in the rabbit hole to kind of get at least enough of a self-diagnosis to say, okay, I have the next step where I can go.
Mhm.
And it was no less than like 5 minutes later after that when trauma just flooded back. So it was the worst coincidence ever. But when I started processing it and started taking apart sort of what's trauma, what's neurodivergence, and all this, I found that there was a lot that was intertwined because of how it impacted me. One of the things that one of my traits is sensory sensitivity. And so it was something that I had internalized for many years. And because I grew up in a very musical house, people played music instruments and stuff, and it was expected that you would and stuff. So for me, a lot of times that noise would be too much, but I would just take it in. Um, and when I realized that, I had things such as like the sensory sensitivity that as a child, that also complicated the trauma even more because all of the events, all the things that I was experiencing were turned up so much more than they
Mm.
would be for someone who was neurotypical, which then kind of revealed to me why my brain had to do what it did to survive because it was too intense. Um, and
So,
in, yeah, but
no, that all makes sense. I mean, no, I get it. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I can understand what you're, what you mean by the whole music and everything else. It was just like it overstimulated you so much to where your brain kind of like blocked some of the stuff out.
yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things though that was was I think challenging when everything was being revealed to me was that I had just turned 43 and all of a sudden like I have these realizations that like halfway through your life, but guess what? You don't understand yourself anymore. Like you have no understanding of yourself. And then you start to kind of rebuild that understanding as I'm going through and looking at things. And I was very upset at first because of just how everything changed all at once. It wasn't enough to have like just one thing happen, that everything had to kind of happen at once.
Yeah,
So I was really mad at my brain at first because I was like, I thought I knew you, and like, what have you been doing all this time? And I was really upset. And it wasn't until I started looking at my CPTSD specifically where I fell back in love with my brain because the reality was that I was in a very unfortunate situation where I was basically a child left to protect myself. Um, and my brain knew that I couldn't.
mhm,
And so my brain, to protect me, allowed me to not experience what I did as a child. It allowed me room, a little bit of comfort, a little bit of peace in a very chaotic moment.
yeah,
Um, Peace that I remember as a child. I remember just like being like zoning out and just being like in my own little safe space. And so once I started piecing all these things together, I realized that my brain was there for me, like at a time when no one else was.
yeah,
Like even my caretakers were not there for me. But my brain was powerful enough and mature enough to say, you can't deal with this. We're going to hold on to this for later, and you can deal with it when you're able to.
yeah,
Um, I gave myself so much more grace and gave my brain so much more grace after that because I was like, you were there for me when no one else was. And so, yeah, I don't understand you,
yeah,
but I am looking forward to understanding you more.
exactly. That's actually a great way of looking at it.
Yeah.
I hope that more people can actually see it that way, because I mean, our brains are definitely something that, it's unexplainable. We don't know how our brains work. We don't know why they work the way they are. And it's just like sometimes you just got to give yourself grace, like you said, just kind of like go through the process of it and see how it.
Yeah.
So I,
It is. It is important to give yourself grace and important to Um, well, I mean, when we're considering trauma, considering PTSD or CPTSD, it's important to remember that these are things that happen to us. We didn't choose these things. We didn't ask for them. It wasn't based off of our own decisions that we made. Um, so we have to start by giving ourselves grace with any kind of traumatic event. Um, and that's the main part is focusing on freeing yourself from any kind of guilt and shame.
Mhm.
Because it wasn't based off of your choices, it wasn't based off of things that you did, you shouldn't be carrying guilt and shame, which means you should be able to be more open, sharing about it, processing it, because I lived for years with a lot of this shame, not really knowing it was even shame,
Mhm.
you know, because when you're when you grow up in certain kinds of environments, you're taught that certain little things are okay, and after a while, all those things become something completely different.
Yeah.
Um, and um, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I'm sorry.
You're fine. I know, there's so much to think about, right? So much to talk
No,
about.
and then the thing is that there is so much. There's so much that's there, and I'm just trying to like keep it all together because there's a lot.
Okay. You're
Um,
Did you want to talk about like what kind of tips and advice you have for people that are going through
yeah,
your kind of situation?
yeah. So tips and advice for people going through PTSD or CPTSD. Um, with obviously with all of those, I think therapy is really important, making sure that you're talking with people to get through it because regardless if it's a complex post-traumatic stress disorder or regular post-traumatic stress disorder, like both both of them, the number one way to deal with it is talk therapy.
Yeah.
Um, and it sounds so it doesn't sound as effective as it truly is, um, but it really does allow you to process things um, because the way your brain works, the way different parts of the brains work, sometimes um, you need to dedicate time specifically to doing specific things so that your mind can regroup. And so when you're doing therapy and you're processing things, you're basically gathering all of you together and saying, all right, we're walking through this.
Hmm.
And then you do get yourself released. You do find it released from you slightly, a little bit by little. So I would say stay on top of therapy,
Hmm.
but then also look into things like emotional regulation. So that's one of the things that's going to be a very common result of CPTSD. Not only that, but neurodivergence in general also causes a lot of emotional dysregulation, but CPTSD also causes that, which means you're getting a double dose,
Yeah.
you know, of this. Um, I took a dialectical behavioral therapy course last year, and it was amazing for my emotional regulation. It helped me out greatly. So I would say, you know, do that as well and do a lot of shadow work too. So that would be my last thing would be the shadow work. When you're dealing with CPTSD and you're dealing with things that impacted your being, who you are as a person, how you were raised, you have to do a lot of work to disassemble that. You have to start asking yourself a lot of why questions. Why do I act this way? Why do I feel this way? Um, and really dive into better understanding yourself. Um, if going at this with a growth mindset, which I would hope anyone would, with when it comes to trauma, that's how I look at handling the trauma is taking it with a growth mindset of what can I learn from myself? How can I be my more authentic self moving forward? And how can I release this trauma, release this stress, this strain on my system? Because that's another part is that it also becomes very overwhelming. And that's also something that we struggle with is being overwhelmed. And it makes it that much easier to get overwhelmed when you have CPTSD or PTSD in general, just because it's stressful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I can
Mm.
understand that. I mean, it is because it takes a lot of toll on you. on your body, your mind, and everything else. I mean, it's a hard thing. I'm sure it's a hard thing to try to guess like what part to, work on more so than the other.
Yeah. And that's kind of been one of the reasons why I've had a lot of stalling, I think, in my sort of growth has been because it's been so difficult hopping from one thing to the next thing, going back and forth because while I would love to focus on just one thing, it's impossible a lot of times because life happens
Oh yeah.
and you have to shift to thinking about other stuff. Um, but slowly getting there, I think it's been a wonderful journey. As much as I don't want to say that anything about it is wonderful, there are wonderful parts to it. And learning about the brain for
Hmm.
me has been one of the more wonderful parts to really, like I said, fall back in love with your brain
Yeah.
about what it can do and what it will do to protect you, and what it will do because it cares about you.
Hmm.
Um, and being able to also just, even though the what plays back in the events and everything aren't pleasant, what is happening within my brain is super fascinating. It's the wonders of knowing that I'm basically playing back like transcripts of like body signals and functions and stuff is it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Um, and so while again it's a sad story, there is things to learn and things to grow from and things to look at and maybe take with some form of gratitude that at least some part of you was there, that you needed to be there, um, during a desperate time.
Mm.
Um, and I think it's really important to stay positive and focused on that kind of stuff, especially when dealing with things like this.
No, yeah, no, I understand that. That's very true, and I like the way you described it too. I mean, that is how we should all like try to like take. I know we keep coming back to the grace thing, but the grace thing, which is just like you just got to give yourself like, okay, well, got to kind of trust yourself too to know what your body and your mind is trying to do. So I mean, a lot
Right.
of trusting, a lot of learning, and a lot of kind of like regrouping. Okay, okay, what happened? Why just happened? Why do we go through all this? And so it's, I mean, a lot of regrouping, a lot of rethinking. Like, okay, it's like you said, like it's like replay.
Right, right. But the thing is that, and this is one of the things that I had to learn throughout the last year. When a lot of things happen at once, um, the it, the fastest way, not even like the fastest way, but the way that I felt was probably just going to be the healthiest for me was to just accept everything.
No, yeah,
Okay. Because everything happened at once, and it would have been so easy for me to just start fighting everything, being like, it can't, it's not this, or I'm not dealing with this. But honestly, when everything happened at once, accepting it was probably the most important thing for me because I probably could have spent months or even years just trying to understand what was happening to
yeah,
me. And I had to let go of that, because otherwise I would have just been spiraling,
hmm,
with all the things that were taking place. But being able to just accept it, allowed me to then say, okay, now I can work with it. Like, what am I going to do with this thing that exists in my life that I cannot deny, I cannot push away? Okay, it's there now. What am I going to do with it? And like I said, I've taken a lot of time specifically with the CPTSD to better understand my mind
yeah,
and better understand um, how to um, how the mind copes.
hmm,
And so I've also been able to see how, another symptom of the CPTSD is that like my amygdala is easily triggered, which means I will easily go into my fear response or get stuck in my fear response, which is to freeze. And so basically, if I am triggered, which that word itself is kind of like diluted because of society or whatever, but literally my amygdala being triggered is what happens is my fear response is just activated. So if you just have like a wave of fear come over you all of a sudden, that's basically what it is.
Mhm.
Um, but that will happen. Certain noises will just all of a sudden cause like this fear where my body then feels fear. My body feels this wave of like a dark cloud just kind of come over you where um, where at least within the way that I've been able to kind of like separate things out, I'm able to kind of separate out the emotional symptoms versus the physical symptoms. And when I'm separating out the physical symptoms and I'm looking at how it affects my body and how it affects um I guess just like my physical being when I'm being triggered, I'm able to kind of like sense and feel sort of the fear that comes over you, the sort of things that then follow after that. The mind then thinking, oh, should I be scared? What's there to be scared of? Because really it starts with your body just feeling fear, that tension, that nervousness. And when I started to learn more about how these things were kind of impacting each other and diving into more of the brain, I started to realize how much of a domino effect that CPTSD is. Because for a lot of people who are dealing with more of the traumatic episodes, when their amygdala is triggered, they will accept that fear as real and they will spiral. But since I have this sort of understanding that, okay, well, I know what happened to my brain. I know my amygdala is going to get triggered. So now, whenever I am randomly triggered, like my first thought isn't fear. My first thought is, oh, must be my PTSD or my CPTSD. Because if I'm just sitting in my living room and all of a sudden fear comes over me, like for no reason, I'm I'm literally thinking there's nothing for me to be scared of.
Yeah.
Why am I scared all of a sudden? So I question myself. Um, but then because of that, because I skip over that emotional trigger, instead I sit with the body feelings. Everything comes to me and like like when I'm triggered and I'm triggered into an episode, those feelings, sensations, they just start playing back. I can't stop it.
Yeah.
Um, and So I'll emotionally be stable, emotionally grounded, because I didn't take that bait of being frightened.
Mhm.
Um, but my body will be shaking. I'll feel like sorrow, like in my throat and stuff, you know. I've even been live on TikTok during an episode saying, oh, you know, here I am with, you know, experiencing an episode right now. So here's some coping mechanisms that I use, you know, and demonstrating that
Mhm.
um, because um, because I've just been able to learn so much about how the mind and the body work together in this. That again, it's so fascinating, like what happens, and I really want to learn more because I feel like there's a lot more that can be learned to help people out with this.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. I know, I understand that. That's definitely a learning curve. What would you say is like a proudest moment that you'd like to share, or even also like a superpower with your diagnoses?
Um, well, long before I even knew I had these diagnoses, looking back, I would say that empathy has been like my huge thing. That for me has been not only a superpower, but has been something that has been like attributed to one of some of my prouder moments. And I've been able to speak to you know, professionals in like technical support spaces about empathy and genuine, real empathy and things like emotional attunement and all that. And have traveled all over the world actually speaking on empathy.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that it was such a superpower, the fact that I took in the world a little different than other people, you know, and that I saw a lot of beauty in the world and I saw a lot of things that people were missing. in their view of the world. And so being able to share that beauty with the people that I did, in a way that resonated with them, I think was pretty awesome, and it changed a lot of lives. As far as just, I mean, I know it's bold to say that, but I've had people who have messaged me years later saying, "Hey, I just spoke at a conference in Germany for gay adoptive parents and telling my story because I saw you tell your story, and that's what gave me the courage to do that." And so being able to be that vulnerable and open with people, but then also sharing with them the beauty in the world, for me was a pretty proud moment. And I would say that another one of my superpowers, though, besides just feeling a lot,
Mhm.
is problem solving. I'm really good at problem solving, really good at computers. And I mean, even when trying to understand my brain, I'm problem solving, and so it's just turning it on itself is what I'm doing.
That's great. Yeah, that is true. I mean, did you want to also include like what you do? Because I'm actually really intrigued on what you do for your work.
Yeah, so I work in IT, and I work on strategies for communicating with people through digital means. So that's a lot of buzzwords, but basically, I know how to build community. I know how to build community online, and I know how to make people feel a part of that community from within a professional sense. Um, so um, it's a very like unique skill set that a lot of companies want because they want to make their companies seem human when they're not.
Yeah. All the AI that's taken over. You still need some people, actual humans, right?
Right, right, exactly. But yeah, so I work in that space.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, that's what I was like when I remember when you told me about that. I was like, oh, I didn't even know they even had that really until you like described it to me. I was like, okay, that makes sense then.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, that's that. So
Okay. And then also, did you want to share like how people can get in contact with you and like what you do for,
sure,
besides.
sure. Yeah, so all right. Yeah, so if people wanted to get in contact with me, I'm on TikTok. My user account is tim.adhd. Um, and I go live pretty regularly. And when I'm not dealing with CPTSD stuff, I typically post a lot more content too.
Mm,
But yeah, if people want to get a hold of me or join one of the lives, more than welcome to. We'll have a decent amount of people in there, and just it's a safe space, and we just talk about whatever.
yep. Yeah, and I've been on quite a few of your lives. That's actually how we met, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep. And I love every time you join the live too. So it's
yeah,
great.
it's
Yeah.
always fun because it's a safe place and it's actually really nice to be able to talk to others about all kinds of different other topics and everything.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the thing is that like what I love about the TikTok neurodivergent community is that we're all kind of coming together and learning a lot off of each other,
Mhm.
in a way that hasn't been done before, because of how we're able to communicate so closely with each other. And I feel like we're going to be able to learn a lot from each other and, be even more, thriving in the future because of that.
Yeah, that is very true. Yeah, I believe that. And also, in the description of the video, I'll also, include all that information for you. And also, if you want to include bio too, we'll have
Okay.
all that in the description so people can get a hold of you and
Yeah.
contact you.
Yeah.
Easier way.
I don't really know how much of a bio I have, but I'm sure I have something.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone has something to put together a little bit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. And then
All
also, do
right.
you have anything else to share? Anything
I
else?
don't think so. Anything else that you feel like is needed? I'm sorry, you're gonna have to go through and edit this quite intensely.
Did you want to also include, like, did you want to talk about your autism or your ADHD or anything like touch base on that a little bit or?
Um, I think that's probably like a whole different a whole different thing. Yeah, because like I said, it's like a bunch of things that happened at once. And so when I'm dissecting certain parts, it's like they all come with their own kind of like intertwinedness with the other thing. Um, But yeah, I think the overview that I gave of is probably enough right now. Anything else would probably just turn it into a much longer discussion.
Yeah. I mean, of course, you're always welcome to come back to, we always have more to share, more to, you
Oh
know,
yeah, yeah.
everything, every day we learn something new. So, I mean, it's always something to come back and talk about.
Sure, yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Well, if you're done sharing, then I guess we'll kind of
Well,
end.
no, I could definitely share more if you want. Just do you feel like you have enough content?
No, it's up to you.
I'm trying to think of what else there would be to share about it. I think I pretty much covered the majority of what it's like. I didn't really touch on the regular PTSD,
Mhm.
but that one kind of just still has the same amount of go to therapy, you know, kind of thing. Um, and I didn't share about what my PTSD was specifically too,
Mhm.
but I don't think that that really matters.
I mean, it's always good to hear about like what you're, how you're
Yeah,
stuff like that. I mean, it's
yeah.
want to share that or not.
Well, no, it's the PTSDs from being from having a GI issue for like a year that was undiagnosed and it was very painful.
Mm.
And so I was like stuck in bed for a year.
Oh,
Um, and that was like about it stopped about 4 months before I hit burnout. So it was one that was not quite dealt with before the next big thing happened, you know?
okay.
And so that one, the effects of that were more just I wasn't able to fall asleep at night because at night was when the effects were the worst
Like,
when I was sick. So it's not as emotionally charged. It's more just like because of this, now my body expects this
mm,
kind of a thing, you know.
okay.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. Do you think that that's something that's valuable to put in there? I don't know. It seems pretty basic, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
compared to like the big thing.
Yeah. No, it's up to you. I mean,
Um,
I mean, you can include the GI issues because I know a lot of, everything does start in the gut. And
right, right,
if your gut's not regulated, it can throw off your body, your mind, everything, it can throw off the
right.
system.
Well, I mean that's part of what was, and I mean part of what led me to burnout was actually involved all those things too.
Mhm.
Because when you're headed towards burnout, you can have a lot of GI issues and autoimmune issues,
Mhm.
and I had both. Um, I so yeah, I'm guessing that like my burnout took probably about 8 years from when it really started to kick up to when it finally hit hard.
Mhm.
And during that time, the last few years of it, I ended up getting type 2 diabetes,
Oh, wow.
which I then took care of, but it was just kind of odd to me that it just randomly showed up and then went away.
Yeah, that
And
is.
then and then after I took care of that, that's when I had the small intestine bacterial overgrowth, the
Mm,
GI issue. Um, and so I ended up getting both of those types of issues then right before I hit um, burnout. But because of the illnesses, I had trauma associated with it. You know, I had the trauma of being sick in bed all night long and the pain of what was happening within my stomach, all that stuff, and just being very uncomfortable. It would be worse at night, and so then I would not be able to sleep at night, and so I had insomnia for a couple of years,
yeah, that makes sense.
um, which then added more to it, you know.
Mhm.
Um, but ultimately, being able to acknowledge and accept that I had the trauma was really important because everything is taxing my nervous system, like
Yeah,
everything, and it 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 was doing the same thing, you know, and the more I'm able to acknowledge it and accept it for its reality, the more I'm able to start to consider it when I'm trying to control everything else. And
mhm.
um, so staying on top of the PTSD has been important, but really what it is ensuring that of the things that you've been dealt with, of the things that you have going on, it really is important to talk through them and process them.
Yeah,
Because if you hold on to them, you're holding on to that stress. You're holding on to the taxing on your nervous system,
That's, yeah,
which
it
we
is.
can't do.
Yeah, it's always good to get stuff off your chest sometimes, just to be able to talk to somebody about it and just like not have a person that doesn't judge you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just, like, let it all go and just like, then that's how you can piece stuff together. And so that's a
Yeah.
great thing. I mean, I'm glad you're bringing that to awareness, to, talk to someone, get the stuff off your chest, so you can start to like heal from the inside.
Yeah. One of the things that I've learned, kind of like a fun tidbit, is I don't like journaling. It's I don't know what it is about it. I just don't like it. Okay, but when I'm dealing with something emotional in my head that's hard to process, if I journal it, say it while I'm writing it down, I'm engaging so many different parts of my brain that is having to hear what I have to say, that's having to know what I have to say, which a lot of times can then be freeing because, again, when you speak it up, when you get all the different parts of your mind together and you hold this conference of, all right, we're going to do this therapy, you give yourself so much more freedom
Yeah.
to release everything. And it's really important that we do that just as people, regardless of, if we're neurodivergent or not. It's we need to take care of our mental health. We need to process the things that happen and
Mhm.
not be afraid to face that stuff. Because regardless, it's going to be taxing our nervous system. It's going to be taxing anyone's nervous system, and we need a lot less panicked people out there.
And it's very true. Yes. I
Yeah.
mean, so have you actually regulated your system? I mean, are you taking like probiotics or anything like that, or taking any kind of supplements to help, regulate your system?
Um, I'm I'm on different types of medication trials right now for a few different things, and so right now they're trying to get some of the ADHD stuff under control. But one of the unfortunate parts of my CPTSD is that the symptoms mimic ADHD.
Mhm.
So when it comes to being inattentive, easily distracted, memory issues, those types of things. CPTSD has the same effect.
Mhm.
But since it's affecting me through the nervous system, and not because of any, sort of like dopamine release or anything, the medication doesn't work.
Oh,
And so I'm kind of stuck in this like very, very intense ADHD thing, which I'm sure you can tell.
yeah.
And I can't get out of it until I process my CPTSD. So
Mm.
that's been a really big motivator for me, has been, well, you can't do this until you do this.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of at the mercy of my brain right now saying, well, no, you must take care of the CPTSD first.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So.
I know, one step at a time, right?
And I got a list. I got a list of things, so I won't be making it through that list anytime soon. I got plenty.
Yeah,
Um,
that's good
yeah.
though. No, I was just asking, just wondering. I mean, I'm glad you shared all that too. I mean, it's very important, for everyone to hear like what your actual experience you're going through.
Yeah. Yep. All right, cool.
All right. Well, okay. So, I guess we can kind of end it here, right? Since you hear
Yeah, sounds good.
a lot of sharing.
I hope it was helpful. Yeah.
Yes, very. No, that actually was very helpful because I mean, I learned a lot too from you. So I was like trying to figure out like how that all intertwined with everything, and it
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
And then once I do get my ADHD under control, I'll definitely be back and then have much more put together thoughts.
You're fine. You did great. It just shows how we all, how our minds all work. It's just like sometimes they're scattered everywhere, and sometimes they're just like they stay together, and you can stay actually formative. But it's all
Right,
depends.
right, right. I miss the days of feeling the other. But soon. All right.
Makes
Well,
your life
this was
interesting, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. I got more to talk about.
Yeah. All right.
Um,
Well, thanks for being a great guest. Thank you for sharing everything. It's been very
this
helpful.
was fun.
Great talking to you. And
Great
I'm sure
talking
we'll
with you as well.
catch each other again. We always like catch each other somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Talk to you later.
All right, bye.